Hello?
Hey man, how you doing?
Pretty good. How's it going?
And this is exciting. The Faction have seriously been one of my favorite bands since my early youth, which I'm only 27, but I never honestly thought I'd get this opportunity.
Oh,
So,
cool. No problem.
first before we get into this, I don't know if I messaged you about this earlier, I might have. Can I send you all of my Faction albums and merchandise for you to sign after this?
Yeah, but it'll just be me here in Vegas because none of the other guys live here.
Oh, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. I just,
Yep.
I'm just that level of excited actually, and I just woke up a few hours ago feeling sick, and I was like, oh, I hope this clears. But so the song that got me into your band was actually California Dreamin'. I don't remember necessarily where I heard it. It might have been off a video game, but did the Mamas and Papas ever contact you guys over that, or did they even hear about it?
You know, they never contacted us, and I don't know whether they heard of it or not. But and this is sort of on the technical, legal side of things. That song um, is considered a parody,
Yeah,
and so you know the fact that I mean, you can do a straight cover. You can cover anybody's song, and as long as you pay the legal license fees,
yeah.
you don't have to get permission. That's people do covers all the time without permission. But to change a song the way we did, if it's not a parody, technically you would have had to get permission. Um, but we always took the position that that was a parody because we were making a socio-political commentary on the how naive that the lyric was um,
Yes.
about the hippie days in San Francisco, and we were living there in the Bay Area, suburban skaters, and we were like, yeah, we don't know about all the leaves are brown and the sky is gray or whatever, but we know about skating down the street and getting beat up by jocks. So this is our California dream right here. So we always took the position that that was a parody and it would fall under the fair use. But they never gave us any shit about it, so we never had to explain it.
Well, that is a good thing, and I gotta say, not only was it a parody, but you actually made, which I know I'm gonna get shit for this, you made that song listenable.
Yeah.
I,
Well,
yeah.
Steve loved the song growing up as a kid, but we weren't going to do a straight cover. There was no way we were going to do that.
Yeah, when I first heard that, I was with my buddy Chad, and, yeah, I think we were either listening to it. No, no, no. So I got I can't remember where I first heard it. That's unbelievable. But I know we were on the way to Lawrence, Kansas, because I'm from Ottawa, Kansas, to Love Garden Sounds. It wasn't from, I think I heard Skate and Destroy off of Tony Hawk 4. But,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, that's the one that I heard in the video game. But we were on the way to Lawrence, and I think actually I had downloaded the collection 82 to 85, and that came on there because I hit shuffle.
yeah,
And at
yeah,
the end of that, I was like, dude, the faction just made California Dreamin' listenable.
yeah,
That's, I mean, I've heard a million covers of that, and I thought it was gonna be a cover. Got through it, I was like, damn,
yeah,
that's a not
yeah,
just, and also it's kind of an update too on it, honestly.
yeah. And that gets out of all our songs. I mean, Skate and Destroy gets the most streaming and downloads and everything, but that one's up there like in the top three or four every quarter when I get the royalty statements. That one's still getting a lot of streams.
I believe it. I was gonna ask, I know quite a bit about your band, but are there two, who are the main writers of the faction?
Well, most of the songs tended to be um, my music and Gavin's lyrics, but there are a lot where Steve and I wrote the music together, and then there are a handful where I wrote the music and the lyrics, like Corpse in Disguise and Kids of the Future and Terror in the Streets, and there are a handful that are just my things, tongue like a battering ram. Um,
I love that
but
song.
but things like Skate and Destroy and Being Watched and Lost in Space and
Lost in
what you consider
Space.
the typical faction song, me and Steve would work on the music and then Gavin would do the words.
Well, I've kind of noticed over the years, two different dynamics on the factions. You have your skate punk songs like, Skate and Destroy, and I want to say innocent songs like Kids of the Future and stuff like that. And then you have your kind of sci-fi horror-esque songs, and I just wondered if there were two different songwriters or like two different
Um,
flavors there.
yeah, it really didn't break down that way, other than, um, we liked and listened to a lot of things like Code of Honor and Adolescence and things that were very skate oriented, and then we also listened to um, the Misfits and things like
Oh,
that had, I mean, if you listen to Corpse in Disguise, I'm just ripping off the Misfits. That's the whole point of that song. And Dark Room, I'm ripping off Social Distortion, and Deathless, I'm ripping off Iron Maiden. I mean, if you dissect any of the riffs in there, you'll see where I'm lifting all those riffs. Which I fully admit. I mean, they're not anybody else's songs, but the influences are
yeah, you
really,
just
really,
put that spice in
yeah,
there.
really blatant. So it wasn't that like it was a different writer. It was just that there were multiple influences. And then towards the end, Steve was just completely amazed by Metallica. And then you start to get those heavier riffs. Like if I brought in those heavier, some like I Decide for Me or some of these heavier riffs in '83 or '84, everybody would have said, That's not punk, that's metal. We're not doing that." But by the time '85 rolls around, and Metallica is having such a huge influence on Steve in particular, I was able to get away with some heavier riffs.
It's amazing how much music and things can change in less than a year.
Oh yeah, I mean, a few people had heard of Metallica, but until Ride the Lightning came out and Fade to Black started to get some mainstream radio airplay, most of us had not actually heard Metallica. They were just a name on a flyer. And because we didn't go to metal shows, we went to punk shows, we would not have come across them. And then, I mean, Fade to Black's a ballad, but at the end, it's just super, super heavy. And so you would check out the rest of their stuff, and then from Ride the Lightning, you go backwards to Kill 'Em All, and you realize, this is not a hair metal band. This is something that's been influenced by,
Thrash and all that.
Motorhead and the Misfits, and they're, and that first one or two Metallica records really got the punk scene to open up to metal in general, because it just bullshit at all.
Well, and I know you've never played Metallica before, but were they actually a part of the scene at one point? Since I've always known them as a mainstream band. I mean, I was born in '93, so
Yeah,
it's kind of hard for me to see Metallica playing underground venues and all that.
yep, they did. They played like the Stone and the Mab, and really, really small rooms that, one
Damn,
week they'd be playing, and then the next couple of weeks later we'd be there opening for Social Distortion, same club.
that's
Um,
bizarre.
and the first night of the Darkroom tour was the Going Away show in San Jose, and Cliff Burton came to that show to see the Faction.
Jesus.
Yeah, so there was definitely there was crossover right around 1985. There was crossover between them still being a club band and then exploding off of Fade to Black, and then Ride the Lightning kind of taking off for them.
I might have to try to get one of them on here. I mean, that can be impossible for me because I'm way too small to. They're a band with the press secretary and all that stuff, which
Oh yeah,
I
yeah. Well,
generally don't fool with that.
James and Steve are actually somewhat of good friends because of this vintage car collecting that they do, and they've hung out at car shows and chatted
Nice.
and stuff. And and when they played, I forget, it might have been an LA show, but Steve was backstage, and Robert Trujillo, from, because he was in Suicidal, he's got a lot of punk roots, and
Yeah, I've
um,
read about him a
and
little
and
bit.
and there's a great video of Metallica playing live on stage, and Rob doing his little crab walk over and like headbanging with Steve on the side of the stage for a minute. Steve posted it like 6 years ago or something, but yeah, so. If you ever did talk to at least James or Rob or something and said, "Hey, I'm a big fan of this skate punk band, The Faction," they're gonna know who it is. They'll know who you're talking
I
about.
will definitely talk about that if I ever get the chance. Which about maybe I won't say small chance. I mean, yeah, I don't know if I'd ever get. Maybe if I get bigger on here, maybe I don't know.
Yeah, you never know.
I've even tried Rage Against the Machine before in the Foo Fighters, and even those bands are. I kind of have the like alternative rock and like mainstream metal. I kind of have all that in
Yeah,
somewhat of a tier list, and our A Team is like tier three, Metallica's like tier five. Like that's up there,
yeah.
Hollywood era.
Well,
But
I'll give you another Metallica connection. This last tour, instead of an opening band, they had comedians, and Joe Sib was the DJ slash second comedian, and who was it? Jim Gaffigan, I think, was the main comedian. So they and Joe Sib is a San Jose punk rocker. He was in Frontline, that became Lifeline, and then Wax and 22 Jacks. And he and I were in bands, and I produced his earlier bands. And so he came out for the Metallica show the night before. He did just a DJ comedy set at a local club, and I DJ'd for him. And
wow,
then the next night was the Metallica show. And then the last time we did the Flogging Molly cruise, Gavin's grandmother was sick and he couldn't go. And Joe Sib was the faction singer for 2 gigs on the Flogging Molly cruise to substitute for Gavin. So our temporary singer was Metallica's opening comedian.
that is.
So there you go. It's all connected.
So the faction itself, and the main existence of its musical career existed between 82 and 85.
Well, that's the original era. And we formed Halloween '82. We had practiced once or twice, but that's when we picked the name, was Halloween '82. And then we did some demo tapes and compilations in '83, put out Yesterday's Gone in '83, No Hidden Messages in '83, Corpse in Disguise in '84, a couple songs on the Valley Within compilation in '84. Then '85, we put out Darkroom and recorded Epitaph, and then we broke up on Halloween '85. So that was considered the classic era. And then there were a few shows from '89 to 2002 that I did not play. I was in college and then law school and then living in Vegas. There were probably 8 or 10 shows just scattered around through those years. And then in 2004, there was a San Jose punk rock reunion 2-night show in San Jose, and they called me up and asked me if I would come out and do the reunion. And so I went out for that. And so that was sort of the classic lineup back together, and we had both our drummers do half the set. And then that was it for 10 years. And then in 2014, we got the current lineup back together for a reunion that was just going to be one show to commemorate the first skate rock
Hell yeah.
compilation. And before that show in Las Vegas, Gavin's brother, who ran a club called the Ritz in San Jose, asked us to do a pre-show up there. So it turned into 2 shows. And then the 2 shows turned into a 6-year reunion that just ended on February 22nd.
Damn.
So that's and that so that short 3 years in the '80s was considered the classic original lineup, but the reunion lasted twice as long, from 2014 to 2020.
I wish I could have seen you guys live. I didn't even. The only which this is kind of a tangent question that I was going to ask later, but yeah, I did not know you guys reformed in 2014. Otherwise, I would have tried to see you live somehow.
Yeah, we had a lot of people come in from a lot of countries, actually. That
Jesus.
especially the first couple of reunion shows, when it looked like there were only going to be 1 or 2. There were people in from Europe and South America came to Vegas for that, what was supposed to be the first reunion show, but turned into the second one because we did a pre-show. And then during the reunion, we played, 4 or 5 times a year. We did the Flogging Molly cruise twice. We went down. We did one show outside of America, down in Chile, for a skate contest down there. and then we announced and did our last show ever on February 22nd back in San Jose. We did the final show. There was an LA show the week before, 2 weeks before, and then the final show was February 22nd. So now we're done playing live, and we're just working on some whatever nostalgia projects, whatever you would call it.
I was gonna say, are you first and foremost, you guys ended right before the pandemic hit. Nice
Yeah,
timing.
well, we technically we know now that it was in the country at the time, and when we came back from San Jose, my wife was really sick and had a hard time breathing
I'm
for
so
like
sorry to
two
hear
weeks.
that.
So we're halfway convinced that she had one of the early cases because it wasn't. It looks like some of the very early cases date back to that time frame in the San Jose area. Um, so yeah, and then everything shut down and nobody's playing live. So it really doesn't matter anymore that we're not playing live anymore. We made a big deal out of it, but now nobody can play live, so it's not that big of a deal. But and then early October, we went back into the recording studio and recorded the Greatest Grinds album, which is the new versions of 12 of our bigger songs.
Damn. Yeah, the world music has especially changed since March, but
Yep.
damn, I was gonna say this, so I can't remember what year it was. I'm gonna say either 2013 or 2014, and if this never happened, let me know, cause I can't find a single video of this or anything, but I swear in 2013 or 2014, might have been 15, I saw either a Toyota or something or some car commercial, and the Kids Are the Future were playing on it, and I was in the living room of my grandmother's house, and I heard the faction coming from a car commercial, and I was like, holy shit! And no one in the house recognized the band but me.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
so this did
mit, mit,
happen?
yeah, it's Mitsubishi Outlander. Um, and you can see the commercial on YouTube still if you search for Mitsubishi Outlander, and the commercial's called "Let Them Play" because the theme was active kids, and so they had the
Wow.
kids rock climbing and skateboarding and
Yes.
riding dirt bikes. So the whole idea was if you have active kids, you need this Mitsubishi Outlander to get them to all their adventures and so yeah, that came out. The I always remember that it came out the day after the Super Bowl in 2015. So it's February or
Oh yeah. So
first week of February 2015. And the reason I remember that is because we would have made a lot more money if it had aired during the Super Bowl, but they started it the next day, and it was on TV for a year.
that commercial was?
Yeah, yeah. It was on like NBA Network a lot, Science Channel, a lot of second tier cable networks. But they bought it for a year of television, and then it's forever on the internet. So like I say, if you look for it on YouTube, it is still on there. Um, but it's not on. It was only on television from February 15 to February 16.
That has been. I'm just glad that I am. This memory is actually a real memory because part of me, like I said, I've never been able to find it, and I was like, Did I actually hear the faction on a car commercial? Like, how did that
Yeah.
even happen?
And there are a couple versions. There's a short version, long version, but they all have Kids of the Future in the background.
How did that commercial come to be?
Somebody who worked for the advertising agency who put it together um, had some background with, you know, extreme sports and skating and stuff like that. And so when they were putting it together and they knew that the theme was active kids, this person either searched or had heard of the faction or something and was looking for something skate oriented to put onto the commercial. And then it was all about kids. And so he comes across Kids of the Future and he throws that in the commercial, pitches it to Mitsubishi, and they said yes. So then they call us up and get permission.
That is fucking amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, I just, like I said, I remembered when it came on, I was in my grandmother's front room, and no one else in the house knew who you were. I'm like, holy shit! That's one of my
Yeah,
favorite bands! Because
yeah,
I was,
Yeah, 99% of the time you hear the faction on TV, it's Skate and Destroy.
I haven't even heard that one on TV. I've only heard the Kids of the Future on there, and I remember I showed my grandmother, like I showed her the actual album and the band, and she's like, "Wait, this punk rock band haven't they have a song on a TV ad?" I was like, "Yeah, I guess so."
Yeah.
Because I wasn't really too used to that. I mean, I'm only 27, but damn.
Well, you know that show, Ridiculousness,
Uh,
with the fail videos, and they laugh at the failed videos, and it's hosted by
is
uh,
that on TV?
pro skater. It's like MTV sitcom. It's not a sitcom. It's an MTV hosted video clip show where they
Yeah,
just kind of laugh about goofy videos. But usually when they have some guy wrecking on a skateboard, they've got Skate and Destroy going in the background.
I'll have to look into that as
Yeah,
I don't really watch TV that much anymore. It's become
yeah. I've
too
only
overly
seen that show.
saturated.
Yeah, I've only seen that show because I get the airplay statements, and I see these TV shows, and I get curious about what they are, and then I'll track them down, and I'll see like Lost in Space gets played on the Science Channel for some space thing. And I don't even know.
Was that a reunion thing you were talking about? Did that correlate into the 2015 Beer City Records release? Faction destroys OC Cabs 50 B-Day Bash.
Yeah, so the first thing was just to do the live show. Now, Beer City had taken over the collection release from Goldenrod Records, who put it out in '96. So we had been working with Beer City just on the reissue of the collection CD flash digital version. And then there was just going to be the one reunion show to celebrate the very first Thrasher skate rock compilation. Um, and then when the reunion kind of lasted, um, Beer City said, well, if you guys are going to do more shows, we should get more product out there. And so we worked with them, and I remastered all the old stuff. We rearranged some of the songs to fix up. There were some weird things where um, some songs from different recording sessions were on the wrong records originally. So we sorted that out. So if you notice the originals compared to the Beer City reissues, some of the songs have been moved around. But so that was spurred by doing the reunion, because with the added interest in the band, Beer City thought we should get some more records out there, and that proved to be smart because they've done really well. And then the reunion lasted through Steve's 50th birthday, and Vans asked us to come out and play his birthday party.
Hell yeah.
Um, and so we arranged with the sound company to do a multi-track recording, and that's what ended up being released on that live record. That's recorded live at his actual 50th birthday party. So like when you hear we sing Happy Birthday at the end, that's really his birthday party.
That is fantastic.
Yeah,
Play at my 28th birthday party.
yeah. We're not playing live anymore, so too late for that.
Are you guys planning on releasing any newer material in the future?
Well, what's coming out right now, and it's on streaming services now. The physical copies should start showing up. Like CD should be here this month, and then the vinyl gets here next month. Is the Greatest Grinds record, which is we did new recordings of 12 old songs. So that's what's coming out right now, and we recorded that in it was October 10th through 14th with Dave Klein, who played drums in Agent Orange for quite a few years. He's not with them anymore, but he's got a recording studio out in LA, so we recorded with him, and it came out great. Like I say, it's already like iTunes and Spotify and Bandcamp. It's already out digitally, but the physical copies are just coming in this month and next month. So that's coming out. And then nobody else knows this because we just decided it in the last 24 hours, but Halloween of 22 is our 40th anniversary, and we're going to put out a 40th anniversary collection that has recordings from the first ones in '83. It's going to have some of the demo tapes all the way
Nice.
through to Greatest Grinds. So it's going to have stuff and a bunch of bootleg live stuff and some of the remastered versions of a song here or there from the records, and all mixed together onto a single album that spans almost the entire 40 years. So that's going to be for our 40th anniversary. So that's Halloween 22 though. So that's a ways off, but that's the next project.
I'm excited for it. I'm actually moving back to the Philippines soon because I'm married over there. But I was gonna say one thing I really love about your band is not just how you guys can go super fast and super slow, but some of your guitar solos are just chaos. Like what Black Flag does, only yours are more super sharp, and I can't even imitate it with voice. Like in
Yeah.
Yesterday Is Gone, you throw two of them in there.
Yep.
Like, how do you do that shit?
Well, that Yesterday's Gone lead is supposed to sound like Black Flag. Um,
Oh, okay.
so that was a huge influence on why that lead sounded like that, and the way I play it live, it was just I'd be running around crazy like Angus Young. I wouldn't even bother to check particularly what notes I was playing, although it always sounded about the same. But that one was the reason that thing reminds you of sort of the chaotic way the Black Flag leads sound is because I was listening to a bunch of Black Flag at the time. I forget whether it was My War or Slip It In, but it was right around those years, and that's what I was channeling. It was Greg Ginn being channeled through me when I was 17, and that's how it came out. And then some of the other stuff, just the really fast hammer-on and stuff like that. It was always just trying to do a fast version of Angus Young. You know, if you listen to those AC/DC leads, they're like slow versions of what I was trying to do. Um, and then, you know, Mike Ness had a huge influence. So some of those leads um, have those sort of long, drawn-out melodic passages. Like the Darkroom lead
Yeah.
is definitely something that I felt after listening to 1945 by Social Distortion. In fact, it's in the same key, but that's what I was being influenced at that time. So, um, th- you know, people have told me over the years that there's and with other bands that I have a particular guitar sound, but all they're hearing is the way I channeled everybody I was trying to imitate, and that's just how it came out. Because I never had a proper guitar lesson, so I don't know how to do them right. So I just have to hear them and then figure out on the guitar how do I make it sound like I want it to sound. Um, so a lot of the things you're talking about there, I think, are my attempts to play Angus really fast.
Damn. Yeah, I was gonna say your guitar sound. I mean, I know you just said it's channeling others, but it's definitely a standout. If you want to put your band on the shelf with many others around that time, it's definitely a standout.
Well, at the time, for punk bands, I was definitely mo had more a traditional rock approach to it. Just as fast as I could do it, though. So if I could learn a riff from an AC/DC record and reverse it and move it up the neck and play it 3 times as fast, that's what ended up in a Faction song.
And I read that I know I'm not a huge skateboarder because I really, really, really suck at it. I like to rollerblade, so that's skating, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, I know that Steve is Steve Calabarn. Sorry, I can't pronounce his last.
Ca Caballero.
Caballero. I know that he's a professional skateboarder, right?
Yep.
And I read that the Faction before he left the band would always rehearse at his studio, and then once he left the band, the practicing and the jamming moved to your apartment.
No, we were at this time we all lived with our parents, and Steve lived with his mom, and I lived with my mom, and there was never a version of the Faction that Steve wasn't in, so he never left the band. We practiced from the end of '82 until probably um, like three-quarters of the way through '84, like over um, like almost 2 years at Steve's house. And then, but the bedroom we were using at his house was really small, but he did have a half pipe in his backyard, so it was a cool setup.
Nice.
It was just really small. And then at my mom's house, we had this huge converted garage with, you know, heat and air conditioning and everything, and it was like twice as big. There were couches, a TV, um, and so and at about that same time, we went from being a four-piece band to a five-piece band, so we needed some extra room. Um, so we practiced there for a while, and I think at the very end, Ray, our bass player, I think at the very end, I think we were practicing at Ray's house. So and that was his mom's house too. So we moved from one mom's house to another mom's house to a third mom's house, and then we broke up. But Steve was always in it. It wasn't that Steve left the band and we moved to practice. There's never Steve and Gavin are the only two people. Actually, now it's only Steve. Steve's the only person who has played every faction show there's ever been. And until this last Flogging Molly cruise, it would have been Steve and Gavin are two people who have played every single faction show. But like I said, Gavin couldn't come on that last cruise, so Joe Sib. Kind of sat in with us and did the vocals for us for those two shows. So as of now, Steve's the only person who has played every single faction show.
That's why I love doing these interviews because half of the shit you read on the internet is just wrong.
Oh yeah, I every once in a while I'll fix something on our Wikipedia page,
Yeah, that's exactly where I read that from, and I was like, okay, let me just ask him that because
yeah.
I mean I've seen I've read the bio of the faction on other sites that say what you're saying that Steve's always been in, but there's that one, and there's also Steve took a trip to Japan and left the band or something like that for a competition he was in,
Uh,
and
well, uh, well, that's not exactly true. There are two things about Steve traveling for skating, and one is that when he was traveling, and it might have been his first Japan trip, he had gotten a Walkman, a personal cassette player, which was really the first time you could take your own music on a plane and travel with it. And he brought along tapes of the Adolescents. And at the time, we were a four-piece band, and Steve was playing bass. And he was listening to the Adolescents with the two guitars, one in the right headphone and one in the left headphone. And he came back from that trip, and he's like, "We need a two-guitar sound. That's the greatest thing ever. I'm switching. I'm switching to guitar, so we can have two guitars." So I taught Steve how to play guitar. He switched from bass to guitar, and then we got ready to join on bass. So that trip changed the band immensely, but it wasn't a problem for us. It was just that he came back, and we turned into a five-piece because he really, really liked that two-guitar sound of the Adolescents. And then after the faction, he was in a band called Odd Man Out, which was really good, great San Jose band, with Ray from the faction and two other guys that hadn't been in the faction. And he was traveling so much for skating that I know that that's one of the reasons that band broke up. The band Odd Man Out definitely stopped because Steve had so many travel commitments for skating that the other guys just kind of felt like they couldn't get anything done as a band. So you've got a correct story, but it's kind of about a different band.
oh, damn it, Wikipedia.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
one of the only sites that it's got some good information, but so much of it is, and not just in this interview, but in countless interviews. Do you know of a musical outlet called Loudwire?
Yeah.
They do Wikipedia fact or fiction, and I'm not gonna lie, I've kind of ripped that off of them a little bit, just because it's kind of fun to do. I mean, Wikipedia, anyone can edit it, but it's just amazing how much is on the site and is just either not true or bent a little bit, and
Yeah. And like I said, sometimes I'll fix stuff on there, but most of the time I just think it's funny, so I just leave it wrong.
I really hope this next one is actually true here. The in September '84, Lincoln, Nebraska, Thrasher Magazine's Midwest Melee. this. Did you guys play there?
Yeah, so we were not on tour. Our tours were always in the summer um, because of school and jobs and just that's just when we went out on tour. Um, and then that show came up, and Steve was skating it, and they were having a big show either the night of the contest or the night before the contest, but there's a big show going on with it, and they wanted us to play the show, but we didn't have any other shows going on, and so um, it was probably my idea because I was always pushing to do as much as possible in the band.
Hmm.
Um, and so the other four of us, um, and this was one of only, I think, two shows where the original drummer Keith was in the band after we turned into a five-piece. So the other four of us got in the van and drove from San Jose to Lincoln for that one show. Steve had flown for the skate contest, and so he met us there. And then I can't tell you exactly what happened at the show, but I know that we did it as a single show, driving straight from San Jose to Lincoln, Nebraska, and back for one show. Um, and that was kind of the last straw for Keith, um, because he thought that was kind of ridiculous to drive that far and take all that time to just play a punk show. And when we got
Dedication.
back, yeah, we got he was probably right, but we got back and he quit the band.
Oh shit!
Yeah. So in like 2000 he started doing the reunions, and he's the drummer we finished with, and he was the drummer, almost the original drummer. I was the first drummer, and then I switched to guitar and we got him. But that was back before we recorded anything. But yeah, we did that wild hair trip, San Jose to Lincoln, Nebraska, and back. Got back, and Keith said, "That's it, I quit."
Jesus.
so, so that trip killed him.
Yeah,
But,
the full thing here says during September '84, just after sessions of Corpse in Disguise finished, the band's presence was requested in Lincoln, Nebraska for Thrasher Magazine's Midwest Melee's skateboarding contest. While Cab was already there competing, which he said, the rest of the band obliged to set out for Friday night, arriving late the following Saturday night. After driving halfway across the U.S. for a one-set gig, the band's performance was cut short just after four songs. The police raided the contest and abruptly brought the festivities to an end. The band cleaned up, hopped in their van, and promptly drove back. And then, yeah.
yeah, I don't remember that particular time the police broke up the show, but it happened a lot, so I can believe that part of it. The only thing that's wrong about that is Corpse in Disguise had probably come out in June, so June to September. It wasn't right after recording Corpse in Disguise. But yeah, the rest of that's basically the same. I just don't remember the show getting broken up after four songs. I know for the Dark Room record release show in Palo Alto, the fire department shut it down after we played 20 minutes
Oh,
because
shit.
of injuries in the pit was the deal with that.
And yesterday, I actually interviewed Brian Brandon from Jodie Foster's Army, and I mentioned this to him. Can you
Yeah,
tell,
Brian.
can you tell me about the 2003 live split you did live in Chicago with the JFA?
That's one of these reunion projects that I wasn't on, but
Oh,
it's a split 7-inch, right? I think I
yeah,
have it.
it's a split
Yeah,
7 inch.
I think Gavin gave it to me. I didn't know and we did. I say we. I'm not on it, but we covered a GFA song, right? Out of School. I think that's what's on there is our cover of a
No,
GFA song.
it's a JFA I Want, JFA Tent Peg, JFA Cokes and Snickers, The Faction, The Whistler.
Oh, the Whistler. Okay, yeah. No, I'm not. I'm not on the studio recording of the Whistler. The first time I played the Whistler was the 2004 San Jose punk rock reunion. That was in the set. So we did a couple songs that they had written while I was not in the band, and then we did the Whistler for the entire reunion. We would play the Whistler almost every show, and that song was written. So this is really, really deep history, but before the band was called The Faction, there was a four-piece band with Steve on bass, Gavin on vocals, Craig Bosch on drums and Russ Wright on guitar. And then Craig Bosch quit to join another band, and they needed a drummer, and they knew me, and they knew that I played drums from another San Jose band and from the skate park, so they asked me to join on drums for the Faction, and I joined on drums. We recorded one demo of one song. We never played live with that lineup. And then for a short period of time, because I was already as good a guitarist as Russ was on guitar, we became a two-guitar version of the Faction and got Keith on drums. But then Russ, shortly after that, got sent to military school and had to quit the band.
Oh, shit.
Well, so fast, and then Russ was out, and he never recorded on a Faction record with us. So to fast forward to 2003, at that point in the Faction reunions, Steve and Ray and Keith and Gavin got back together with Russ Wright, that original guitarist from the very beginning, and played a few shows and recorded a few songs, and he wrote The Whistler, and that's him on the recording. And then he left after just, I don't know, a year or 6 months or something. So it looks like Russ Wright's a new guy replacing me on that recording with the Faction. It's not really. It's the guy who was the guitarist before me coming back just for a short time in the early 2000s. Damn. We got to do one of those. You've seen those band family trees where they do the little charts and all the change in members? We should do one of those. But so that's where the Whistler comes from, and they did that split with JFA. So that was cool. That's a cool little record, but I'm not on that recording. It was actually reissued for a charity about 2 years ago with 3 other songs that I'm not on, but my picture's on the record as if I played on it. So it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I gotta say, this happened merely by coincidence that I had the Faction yesterday, not the Faction, JFA yesterday and the Faction today. Both of, you're not twin bands like I'd consider the Adolescents and the Descendants, but both the Faction and JFA resonate well together, especially on that record. And I mean, you're both skate bands. They've got a bit more of an experimental prog rock side of them, as if you've heard Nowhere Blossoms and Mad Gardens, and you guys have a horror sort of side to you, and it's a very interesting chemistry.
Yeah, they played our last 2 shows with us.
Damn. And Brian was telling me that you guys played quite a bit back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, probably over the 3 years, we probably played with JFA like 10 times, so it seems like a lot, but definitely our first and probably our only Phoenix show in '85. Yeah, JFA brought us down for that show. That was on our summer tour of '85. And then they would come up and play here. And I think we played sometimes in Sacramento with them too. So, yeah, we played during those first 3 years, the classic era. We probably played 5 or 10 shows with JFA, 5 or 10 shows with Social Distortion, 3 or 4 shows with Suicidal Tendencies. There were certain bands that were always around and always on the shows with you.
Who chose the bat for the front artwork for the collection and the little picture of the UFO on the back of it? Or
I think that because that was first released by a guy named Mark Waters on his Goldenrod label. Most people have the Beer City version, but that's actually a reissue. The original, it's a slightly different cover. It's got the bat picture, but instead of a red Faction logo, it's got blue lettering.
Yeah, that's the one I have.
Okay, so that one's Goldenrod Records. That's the original.
Holy shit, nice. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So that's the first pressing CD of Collection, and I put that track list together and the master tape together for Mark Waters. I had just started law school, so this is, let's see. No, actually, I think I was second year law school already, because I think it was '95 we put that together. And I think that artwork and picking that bat picture and the UFO on the back, I think Mark and Gavin work that out. I know that I never saw the artwork till it was ready for approval. I mean, I saw it before it was made, but I didn't have input on putting it together. I just had input on picking the songs and getting the master tapes together. I had to get, they were on, actual reel-to-reel tape, with that you see on the old tape recorders with this
Yeah.
with the you know that's how they were sitting in my closet, and I had to go to a studio and have a digital transfer made of those tapes, which is the only time they've been played since they were recorded in the 80s. And now I still have those tapes, but they've only been played once, and it was in 1995. I made digital masters out of all the original tapes. They probably wouldn't even sound good anymore because they haven't been stored very well. But so I did that digital transfer. We put together the track list for collection, and the artwork. I think it was Mark Waters from Goldenrod working with Gavin to do that art.
Nice. And is that the collection number 2 uncollectible from AVD Records?
Yeah,
I don't own that one, but
yeah. I put that one out. I forget what year. Like I want to
it says
say
2001.
2001. Yeah, that sounds about right. But there were certain a collection is missing various songs from all the records, and so that one catches up with all the missing songs, and then that's also the first reissue of a cassette only release from '85 of our live show at CBGB's. So Collection 2 CD is the
Oh,
first
wow.
digital version of the um, CBGB show, and then there's also some rare demos and stuff. It's basically just an anthology
Yeah,
of
I'm looking at
rarities.
the track list of it. I've never even heard the collection 2 uncollectible.
Yeah, I've got like 5 copies of them still.
Send me one. That'd be awesome.
All right, when I send back your stuff, I'll throw it in there.
Righteous, and please sign it too. I see on here, which I'll listen to this once I receive the CD. Interview with KFGC. Who's that?
So that's a radio station, and that whole we did. They had a program called Late Night Live where they have bands play live in the studio, and then as part of that process, they do an interview with the band, and then we were interviewed a second time on KFJC. It's Foothill College's radio station. They're in Palo Alto, California, and they were the punk station back in the 80s. So that's an interview we did on the air there. Our whole late night live show is on iTunes. We've got a series of live shows called the Bootleg Series that are digital only, but they're all on iTunes. And the KFJC late night live show is on there, and that's one of the first times we played as a 5-piece, and it's one of the first shows with the new drummer at the time, Craig Bosch, who was actually the old pre-Faction drummer, who quit back before we had the name The Faction. But if you go on iTunes or other digital sites, I think Spotify or whatever, and you look up the Faction Bootleg Series, that KFJC show is one of them. It's a cool show. It's a cool selection of songs. Gavin's sick and sounds froggy, and the guitars are out of tune the whole time. But we released it anyways because it's history.
Hell yeah, dude. Sounds awesome. I was gonna talk about another song off the collection, which I don't. I think this is on. I don't remember which album it's on. Why Save the Whales? Is that a mock against PETA?
Uh, Not specifically PETA, but yeah, that was well. It was a joke. I mean,
It's an
but
amazing joke.
yeah. So that's on. We've only had one full-length album of original material, and that's No Hidden Messages, and it's Why Save the Whales is on there, and yeah, Gavin. I think it basically started with Gavin's lyrics where he was just poking fun at the whole conservationist PETA thing, and at the time there were TV ads running, and there was a campaign. It might have been PETA, but I can't swear it was PETA. It might have been its own organization, but it was the Save the Whales Foundation.
I think
Um,
I've actually read about this in 80s
yeah,
history.
Yeah, so it's like what I mean to you, it probably seems like the classic old advertising, like where they had the anti-drug one where they put the fried egg
Say
on the
no to
pan.
drugs. This is your
Yeah, the
brain on
same.
drugs.
This is your brain. This is drugs. Here's your brain on drugs, and they fry an egg. So it's around that same area where we had all these public service ads going on, and Save the Whales was everywhere. We just they would just beat it to death. And so Gavin, just as a joke, he wanted to come up with this song. Why save the whales? Let's save us. Um, give me the money, I'll open a trust. So it was making fun of that whole scene, and I'm like, well, that if we're gonna make fun of hippies, I'm gonna play an acoustic guitar. So
Yes, I love that
so that
intro.
yeah, so that's the only faction song with an acoustic guitar. But that's my way of making fun of Gavin's making fun of this hippie save the whales thing, which I don't endorse that. I think we should save the whales and the planet, and it's all good. But it was funny, and we were
Damn right it
17.
was.
So if it's funny and you're 17, you don't care if it's politically correct.
Hey, it's a damn good song. Another
Yeah.
one of my favorite songs by the faction, which I actually worked at 7-Eleven this year. I live in Illinois now, Moline, but I worked there for 4 months. I was the night person, which they let me play my own music over the speaker system, which was nice.
Uh-huh.
A lot of customers got introduced to bands like the Faction, JFA, a lot of Pinaway Punk, Dead Kennedys, Bad Religion. It was a very one customer who regulared the 7-Eleven I worked at, because the person before me, I guess, this listened to a bunch of. They listened to oldies on the radio, and this guy comes in. He's like, I've been coming in here a few times when you're in here, and this music you're playing, is this what kids are into nowadays? And I'm like, how about 40 years ago?
Yeah.
I always get that of when I listen to punk rock music around people who have no idea what it is. Oh, you kids in your music nowadays? Not nowadays. What the hell are you talking about? But
Yeah.
anyway, let's go get cokes. I will say this on a recording because I'm proud of it. I would treat them up as a guitar and I'd rock around that building too. Because there's a line that 7-Eleven gulps are the best. Like,
Yep.
that was my song for working. That was my song for working. And now I hate 7-Eleven because they let go of me because I have dyslexia and I can't perform that fast. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's my 7-Eleven song for or my punk rock song for 7-Eleven.
Well, I'll tell you that's one of the 12 songs that we just re-recorded for the Greatest Grinds,
Hell
and the
yes.
the new version is really cool. And we that little skit on the original where I say, "Hey Mac, you want a
My
Pepsi?" And
Pepsi.
Gavin, yeah, and Gavin says, "No way." I didn't tell Gavin until he came into his vocals, but we because he did his vocals and then he left, and then the next day me and Steve did backing vocals, and we were talking, and I'm like, hey, let's change the skit, because Gavin had already done the no way part. And so I, instead of the new version, instead of saying, hey Mac, you want a Pepsi, I say, hey Gavin, is that a Pepsi? Like he's drinking a Pepsi. Because there's a video called Peg for
Pig.
Live.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a scene in there in front of CBGB's, and one of the guys from our opening band, Sean from the Drab, sees Gavin walking with a soft drink, and he says, "Hey, Gavin, is that a Pepsi?" And Gavin turns around and shows it's a bottle of Coke. And so on the new version of Let's Go Get Cokes that just came out, instead of saying, "Hey, Mac, you want a Pepsi?" I say, "Hey, Gavin, is that a Pepsi?" And that's goes back to that video.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so if you listen to the new version, you listen to that skit, you'll see the words are slightly different.
I'm very OCD, so I will definitely notice that.
Although the new version doesn't have the burp, and I heard from the guy who did the cover art, who is a big fan, and he's like, "You guys didn't do the burp." I'm like, "Okay, well, listen to the original if you want to hear the burp."
Alrighty. Another thing I was gonna ask is the song "I Decide for Me," which that's I gotta say that's probably my favorite faction song, honestly, because on an emotional level, that song got me through so much growing up. Because I have a very like I'm gonna mess this up. Adventist really, I don't know. My mom's side of the family is hardcore religious and
Oh,
the
okay, yeah,
Adventist sort of way, and my uncle, who I'm not gonna he's gonna probably listen to this anyway. He used to give me a lot of shit for just, which I like to just do my own thing, right? I didn't ever bother anyone, but he would
Yeah,
always give me shit, and not just that, but the school that I went to and everywhere, and I just like the fire and the fury of that
yeah,
song. And the one line that sticks out to the most to me is, I could understand it if you were God up in heaven above, but you're just someone I try to ignore. And I remember I was in the car with,
you're the hawk that killed the dove.
yeah, you're the hawk that killed the
Yeah,
dog. I was in the
that's the best. You got to finish it because that's the best part.
my brain kind of skipped out on me.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But I was in the car with my uncle once, and he was talking to me about this. I don't even remember what the fuck it was. I was trying to ignore it, but I was in my 1990 Ford F-150, which had pretty good speakers for being a shitty vehicle, and I just turned that on, played it all the way to where he was right there and could hear it. And then right as that part came up, I looked at him, and for the rest of the car, it was total silence from him. And he's like, "Hey, I'm sorry,
Mhm.
okay." It's like, yeah, you fucking better be.
Well, I'll
But
tell you that that that's definitely one of those ones where I brought in a riff and then Gavin wrote all those words and those are probably his best words, I think. And a lot of people say that's their favorite Faction song, which is kind of ironic because there was still a little bit at the time in '85. There was a little bit of the view that punks still shouldn't like metal, and the metal people were not punks, and there was
oh
just
yeah,
still a
there is
little,
a bit of a metal fusion there.
yeah, and that song, I mean, that song's straight metal, and Gavin does not like metal, but he liked that riff, and it brought out, I think, his best lyrics. And again, that's one. The re-recording on that is probably my favorite re-recorded song on Greatest Grinds, because as chunky as that riff was back when we did that original, I like layered on like three more guitar tracks. It's so heavy now, and Gavin tweaked.
It's a
I think,
pissed off song.
yeah, he had years ago he had rewritten two lines of the song, and whenever we played live during the reunion, he would forget the new versions and
Oh
he would sing the
shit.
old version. And so when we did the re-recording, he was like, "I'm so glad we're re-recording this because I'm finally going to change these two lines," and they're really minor. I mean, it says "from the valley within," and now he says "from the valley I'm in," and he 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 says,
Go away. Take the
yeah,
judgment with you. Fuck
yeah.
yeah.
And then he changes another line where it used to say, um, God up in heaven above, and I think he says, in a world that's ruled by love or something. He had these two changes he had in his head for like the last 30 years that he's been wanting to change, and he finally got to change them. But the whole new version is like 20 times heavier than the original,
I
so
can't wait
it
to
came
hear
out really
this.
cool. Yeah. Like I say, like if you pop on Spotify or Bandcamp or iTunes, the digital version is out right now. People can get it, so
You
it's pretty rad.
you just have one of the coolest bands of all time, and that's all there is to it, man.
Yeah, it's too bad. I guess it's just history has to be how history went. But if we had not stopped in '85 and everyone had just been able to devote themselves to being a band and really live that life, I sometimes think, wow, we could be up there with some of these bigger bands. On the other hand, I don't know if I could afford it, because I've been for 25 years. I've been an attorney, and um, you know, I see how musicians, even in bands that are way bigger than us, are struggling right now. Maybe it was just the way it was meant to be. Because I mean, the reunion was rad, and the only thing that had bothered me over the years is that I didn't think those 1980s recordings were didn't sound that great. They weren't heavy. They were kind of washed out and weak to my ear, at
Well,
least.
they made a
And
huge impact on my childhood, I'll say that
yeah, I
much.
know people always say, "Oh, I always complain about the old recordings," and they're like, "I don't know what you're talking about, man. I think that sounds great." I'm like, no, you don't hear. It's too much reverb, and the kick drum sounds weak, and the timing's off. Nobody hears that stuff. But it bothered me all these years, and so I really pushed to do this Greatest Grinds thing and just take 12 of the bigger songs, and we didn't do any of the covers. So we didn't do California Dreamin' or Your Generation. We just did our songs, and just record them really well just for once before we stopped doing it. So the whole reason behind that is the reunion. We got to close out the live shows on our terms, and we got to announce the last two shows, LA and San Jose. And again, that last show, San Jose, people came from, I think, 5 different continents. I mean, it was a big deal, and people had tears in their eyes, and there were two, sometimes 3 generations. They brought their little kids. The LA show was all ages, so we had like 4 and 5-year-olds there, and 2 and 3-year-olds. We had at least 3 generations there. A friend of mine was there with her daughter and her uncle, so we had 3 generations at least, and so we got to close out the lives thing on our own terms and with a plan. We just didn't suddenly break up or anything, but then we stayed together, and we got to, with this Greatest Grinds thing, in my mind, kind of close out the recording career on our own terms by finally, to my ear, getting those songs to sound heavy and punchy and thick. And Gavin sounds great. Gavin's voice hadn't really changed that much, so it doesn't sound that like, it sounds like it's us. And on the leads, I probably kept 80% of the leads the same as the originals. So it's really the same band. It's just I never thought any of our recordings hit anywhere near as heavy as our live shows until this Greatest Grinds record. And now it's like I put this thing on the car, and my rear view mirror shakes and stuff, so it's cool.
Yeah, I was going to ask 2 questions here. The first one, which this just popped up on my screen after about, because I've got about 5 different faction websites up here just to kind of go by, and I just noticed on the Wikipedia article, it says, this article has multiple issues. Please help improve it or discuss these issues on the talk page. Wikipedia itself even has declared that some of the information is false, which is kind of nice. But the other question I was going to ask is I guess that wasn't really a question. What initially caused the faction to break up originally?
Well, in '85, we were we had my friend Chris, who was doing our show bookings, and the record label had always been run out of my house, and my mom actually.
I Am Records.
Yeah, my mom actually gave us the money for the first record, and so I ran the record label out of the house and did all the mail order, and I would put together, organize the artwork for the albums and book the recording sessions and do a lot of the planning and the work behind the band. And so that, and at the time we're like between the ages of 18 and 20. And so what happened was, and you know, if you read the stories about musical direction, like I wanted to go metal and they wanted to go in a different direction, that's not what happened. That's one of those totally apocryphal kind of stories. So what happened was really a breakdown of communication. My perspective on the band was that I was doing all the work and nobody else was helping me. And, you know, they were kind of ungrateful and taking advantage of me doing all the work. And their perspective was they wanted to be included and do more of the work, and I was leaving them out. How come they didn't get to help with the label and the artwork and doing more? So if we had communicated, you can see how that wouldn't have caused a breakup, right? Because I was feeling taken advantage of and ticked off that I was stuck doing all the work, and they were feeling left out, that they didn't get to do more of the work. So it's this kind of stupid thing only like 19 and 20-year-old skater kids can do. Hopefully you grow up and you get more mature, and this did happen to us. You get better at communicating because we fully reconciled. We had the greatest reunion of all time. We love each other. We're not even broken up now. Yeah, like at this point, we said, like, people say, why are you breaking up now? And I always say, we just stopped playing live. I mean, we're not breaking up. I'm more in touch with those guys more now on these projects and things than we ever were in touch with each other when we were a band. what in '85 we were giving each other messages through our manager. We weren't calling each other directly anymore.
Holy
And
hell.
so I'm sitting there feeling bent out of shape because I'm stuck doing all the work. I enjoyed doing it, but I felt like I was I was doing it all. Nobody else was helping. They were feeling like I had taken over, and they wanted to do more of the work and be more involved. So we all wanted the same thing and never talked about it
How come?
because we're stupid and young, and we didn't know how to articulate our feelings to each other. I mean, that sounds like an Oprah Winfrey show, but that's the reality. If we had sat down in a room and say,
I was
well,
just gonna ask, why not just sit down
yeah,
in the living room
could,
where your mom's or
yeah,
somewhere?
because that would have been smart and the right thing to do. So we didn't do it. I
Hey,
don't know
good.
what to tell you, but I can tell you that it like the classic story is that I wanted to be a metal band and they wanted to stay more punk. That's not true. Steve is definitely with me on the metal riffs and being more like Metallica and going heavy. He loved that. They all kind of love heavier stuff. I mean, Gavin didn't want to do anything stupid heavy metal, but it wasn't musical. I mean, that's kind of the bullshit story we told everybody because we couldn't even articulate what the real reason was back then. But now we're 2022. We're coming up on our 40th anniversary. We've grown up a lot. We've talked a lot. I can tell you, we broke up because of poor communication. That's why.
And it's really made me happy to hear you guys are still friends and doing good today because, not gonna lie, I've interviewed quite a few musicians who tell me the polar opposite. Not about your band, but of their band. Oh fuck no, we're never getting back together. Fuck those guys. We had our golden days, but now, fuck that shit. We ain't touching that anymore. I'm really happy
Yeah,
to hear that you guys are still friends and, you know, still loving the band. You may not be touring, but working on what you're working on. That really makes me happy as a lifelong fan.
yeah. We kind of went the opposite direction. We went from kind of going our opposite ways, and then
Patched it up.
Ray and after the fact, Ray and Steve were an odd man out, and like I said, Steve's skating commitments caused some tension with odd man out, and then Steve and Ray kind of went their separate ways as far as being in a band. So that you can be friends with people you can't be in a band with, but you can't be in a band with people you can't be friends with. So it, we're all still friends, and that's the important part. It doesn't matter whether we're going to get on stage together.
I also one last kind of ancillary question here. I read that Cab was in another band called Los Alvedados.
Ray was.
Oh, Ray was.
And still is. I mean, they still play once in a while. I can tell you that as far as San Jose punk rock bands go, the Faction was the first one to put out a record, and the Faction was the most well known because of the records and the tours and Steve Caballero being a famous skateboarder. But the best San Jose punk rock band always was and still is Los Olvidados, Ray's other band. They're just amazing, and they did finally have a record come out many years after, like it might have been in the 2000s. It's a great record, and it sounds good too. It's not as amazing as they are live, but Los Salvadoros as a live band in San Jose in 1984, 85, 10 times better than the Faction. Just mind blowing.
I'll have to
Just a
give them a
great
listen.
band.
I have
Yeah,
a
if you get their record, you can kind of get a sense of it. It's kind of their record sounds better than the old Faction recordings, but it's still kind of the same deal. Like you listen to that record and you might think it's really, really cool, but I'm telling you, live they were 100 times better than that record is, and that record's better than every Faction record combined. I mean, they're just such a great band, and the fact that Ray could play in like 3 or 4 bands was lucky for us because we got to have him in our band too.
yeah, damn. I will. I'll definitely look into that band and check that out because I read about it here and there, but just imagine you're a student in high school and you're doing a book report, or in my case, I used to have this class called music appreciation, in which I'll give it credit for pretty much steering me into this path of music journalism. But back when I was in high school, I used to use we'd have this thing where we could bring in a band to talk about like once or twice a week. We could play a couple songs and just do a teach about the band, about the music, for to just educate people on music appreciation.
Right.
No one actually had to like it or listen to it, but it kind of gave us our moment of just spotlighting the music that we're into, because not everybody listens to the same thing. Even top 40 hits kids, they got that one band that, isn't on the radio. But anyway, I did bring the faction in once, and hearing everything you've told me through this interview, oh my god, I got so much shit wrong back then. I mean, that was 10 fucking years ago, but I used Wikipedia, I used multiple sources because back then I had no idea how to contact anyone. I'm 27, I was like 17 then.
Yeah.
Holy shit, I'm sitting here just reeling. I was like, oh my god, I stood up in front of that whole class and fed them a bunch of bullshit.
That doesn't matter.
Wow. Can't
I think
ever.
I think some I think some of the wrong stuff is better than the real stuff, and it's all kind of entertaining. So I don't really object to the wrong stuff being out there on the internet. I just don't care.
I'm just kind of glad that wasn't taped.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been kind of funny to sit there and listen to it. Like, oh yeah, that's all. Everything you're saying is completely wrong. Stop making it. Which no one in the class really paid attention to me because I listened to punk and they were all into hip hop and trap rap music and shit like that. So I
Yeah.
was pretty much just talking to myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. Fuck, I'm blown away by this. You've taught me a lot, and I will always love the faction.
Cool.
Is there anything else you wanted to add to this?
Uh, Not really. Just really, really happy with the greatest grinds to get something recorded that I think sounds good. Even if fans always like the recordings, they always bugged me. So I'm just pretty happy to have gotten that done.
I, I can kind of relate to that as an artist myself. I don't make punk music. Do you listen to Sonic Youth or the Melvins or Melt Banana, any noise rock?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm a noise musician. I have 3 albums, well, the third one's in progress. But Fakeality, I've been working on it since 2013. I just released it this year. My second album is called Nihilistic Endorphins, and what happens all the time is I'll sit if you ask me, so how's your music? It's shit. Then everyone
yeah,
else listens to it and they're like, dude, this is amazing. No, it's shit.
yeah.
Quit lying to me. I think that's just a thing with musicians.
It's just the way it goes.
I kind of did have one non-interview question for you.
Oh
Which,
wait, but just so I don't forget, since you mentioned liking the Melvins, they opened for us in Seattle in 1984.
damn,
Yeah, and the club, which is called the Graven Image,
I
it's not
think I've
there
actually
anymore.
heard of that, honestly.
Yeah, it was a famous punk club. It was like the Seattle CBGBs, but they had a tiny a mini half pipe in there, and the night we played and the Melvins opened for us, Kurt Cobain was skating there. Nobody knew him, but he was a big Melvins fan,
Oh
and I
yeah.
think he might actually been their roadie or something. He roadies for the Melvins, but there was a article about that night in Rolling Stone. I have a clip for it. It's a 1999 article about Steve and the Warped Tour or something like that, and it talks about Kurt Cobain skating the half pipe at Graven Image in 1984 when the Faction played Seattle. I think it's funny.
Yeah, I was gonna say on that, Kurt Cobain was not just a roadie, but him and Buzz, for a short time, played in a band called Fecal Matter
Okay.
before Nirvana and before the Melvins.
Yeah, so I mean, Kurt probably was not there to see the Faction show. He was there for his buddies, the Melvins. But I remember it was a great show and a great night, and everybody was really cool. So that's our little Melvin story.
Nice, nice Melvin story.
There's a great flyer from that night circulates on the internet.
I wish I could get an original Faction flyer. That'd be cool to hang on the wall.
Yeah, I'll see if I've got duplicates of anything when I send your stuff back.
I collect a lot of cassette tapes, and I really wanted to own that on cassette.
Yeah, the Greatest Grinds cassettes should be coming in like in 2 or 3 weeks, so
Oh,
that'll be
there's
cool.
cassettes of it too.
Yeah, and actually each version of it, the vinyl, the CD, and the cassette have slightly different artwork. They have different photos, so it's kind of cool.
Hell yeah! Well, that's
Yeah,
good
and
enough.
actually the cassette, which does not have lyrics, the album has lyrics, the cassette doesn't have lyrics, but the cassette has more photos than any other format because
And
it's got one of those rolling 8-panel fold outs, and it's all
hell
photos.
yeah!
So it's a cool little cassette release.
When's this coming out, you said?
I think it's going to be like 3 weeks before they get done. All the artwork and the masters are with the pressing plant, and they're in the Midwest, and I think they're like 3 to 6 weeks behind, and they've had it for a couple weeks now. So I'm thinking it's like 3 or 4 weeks out.
Alrighty. When that comes out, I'll buy a cassette version and then I'll just send you all my stuff to sign and all that.
Cool.
Hell yeah, dude. You keep making my day left and right.
Awesome.
Anyway, man, thanks for this interview. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
Have a good one.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Dope.